The Irish Confederate Wars, the forgotten war that killed half of Ireland. What if I told you that in just over a decade, Ireland lost nearly half its population to war, famine, and disease? The Irish Confederate Wars, fought between 1641 and 1653, were more than just battles between armies. They were a struggle for faith, land, and survival. Known also as the 11 Years' War, these conflicts were part of the larger wars of the Three Kingdoms, which engulfed England, Scotland, and Ireland. At the heart of it lay deep divisions between Catholics and Protestants, the native Irish and the settler population, as well as supporters of the king and defenders of Parliament. What began as a rebellion quickly became one of the bloodiest chapters in Irish history. The war was shaped by overlapping loyalties and competing visions for Ireland's future. Some fought to restore Catholic rights, while others defended Protestant landholdings and political dominance. The involvement of England and Scotland made the Irish conflict part of a larger European crisis, with foreign alliances and religious powers watching closely. By the end, Ireland was devastated. Its fields burned, towns destroyed, and its people scattered or dead. The legacy of these wars is still remembered as a time of immense suffering and transformation. Ultimately, the Irish Confederate Wars ended in total defeat for the Confederates and Royalists, sealing Ireland's fate under English parliamentarian control. This was not just a political outcome, but a human tragedy of staggering proportions. Hundreds of thousands perished from starvation and disease, while survivors faced forced exile or servitude abroad. The war reshaped Ireland's population, land ownership, and religious life for centuries to come. To understand the Ireland we know today, we must first explore the roots and devastation of this conflict. Causes and preconditions. The seeds of war were planted long before the first shots were fired. One of the greatest sources of resentment was the system of land confiscations, known as the plantations, especially in Ulster. Large numbers of native Irish and Catholic Old English families were dispossessed of their ancestral lands, which were then granted to Protestant settlers from England and Scotland. This left deep scars, fueling hostility between communities and a determination among Catholics to regain what they had lost. For many, rebellion was not just about politics, it was about survival and dignity. Religion added fuel to the fire. Anti-Catholic laws stripped Irish Catholics of basic rights, limiting their ability to practice their faith openly or participate fully in public life. Protestants, meanwhile, often lived in fear of Catholic uprisings, which made coexistence fraught with suspicion. By the early 1640s, Catholics feared a complete eradication of their rights and culture under Protestant rule. The Rebellion of 1641 was born from this fear, beginning with a failed plot to seize Dublin Castle. Administrative and governance grievances made matters worse. The Irish felt they had no real say in their own affairs, with English authorities dominating political decisions. Local elites sought greater self-rule, while ordinary people longed for relief from taxation and repression. When rumors spread of planned anti-Catholic crackdowns, the situation exploded. The initial uprising quickly spiraled into widespread conflict, engulfing all of Ireland. If you're fascinated by how religious, political, and cultural tensions can ignite into massive wars, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We're on a mission to share powerful stories of history that shaped our world, and your support helps us keep going. Phases of the wars: the plot and rebellion, 1641 to 1642. The Irish Confederate Wars began with a bold but ill-fated plan. In October 1641, Irish Catholic gentry, led by Sir Phelim O'Neill, attempted to seize Dublin Castle and overthrow English rule. The plot was betrayed, yet rebellion still erupted in Ulster. Catholic rebels captured strongholds, and violence quickly spread to the countryside. Protestant settlers, unprepared for the scale of the uprising, often found themselves defenseless. The early months of the rebellion were marked by chaos and brutality. In Ulster, reports of massacres of Protestant settlers shocked England and Scotland, inflaming sectarian hatred. Protestants formed militias to defend themselves, often retaliating with equal cruelty against Catholic civilians. The cycle of revenge set a grim tone for the wars to come. Propaganda exaggerated atrocities on both sides, making reconciliation nearly impossible. By 1642, the rebellion had grown into a nationwide movement. In the Pale, Old English Catholics, once loyal to the crown, joined the cause, while other regions erupted in defiance. Government forces attempted to suppress the uprising, but the scale of the conflict overwhelmed them. The stage was set for the emergence of a new Catholic political and military order. This would become the Irish Catholic Confederation, headquartered in Kilkenny. The Confederates' War, 1642 teat. The year 1642 marked the birth of the Irish Catholic Confederation, a self-governing body that sought to unite Ireland's Catholics under one cause. Based in Kilkenny, it brought together both Gaelic Irish and Old English leaders. Their goal was to secure religious freedom, restore confiscated lands, and assert a measure of Irish self-rule. The Confederates controlled large portions of Ireland, raising armies and even seeking alliances abroad. For a time, it looked as if Ireland could govern itself independently of England. But unity was fragile. The Confederates were divided between moderates who wanted compromise with King Charles I and radicals who demanded full Catholic rights. External support from Catholic Europe was promised but never fully realized. Meanwhile, Irish Protestants and English forces resisted fiercely. These divisions weakened the Confederates at crucial moments. The Confederates saw both triumph and disaster on the battlefield. Owen Roe O'Neill led a stunning victory at the Battle of Benburb in 1646, showing Ireland's military strength. Yet defeats at Dungan's Hill, Knocknanos, and Cashel crushed Confederate morale. Disagreements over treaties with Royalists further split the movement. By 1648, the Confederates were forced into a fragile alliance with Royalists, leaving them vulnerable to the storm that was about to arrive. The Cromwellian conquest, 1649 to 1653, the arrival of Oliver Cromwell in 1649, marked the deadliest phase of the wars. Leading the Parliamentarian army, Cromwell unleashed a campaign of ruthless efficiency and terror. His goal was simple: crush all resistance in Ireland and secure it for the English Commonwealth. The sieges of Drogheda and Wexford became infamous for their brutality, as civilians and soldiers alike were massacred. Fear spread like wildfire, and resistance grew desperate. Parliament's forces were better supplied, disciplined, and relentless. Irish and Royalist forces attempted to resist at Clonmel, Limerick, and Galway, but one by one, the strongholds fell. Cromwell's use of scorched earth tactics left the countryside barren, leading to mass starvation. Guerrilla fighters, known as Tories, continued resistance, but they too faced savage reprisals. The war had turned into a war of annihilation. By 1653, all organized resistance collapsed. The Irish Confederate Wars were over, but the suffering was far from finished. Entire communities lay in ruins, famine raged across the land, and survivors were hunted down. For Ireland, the Cromwellian conquest marked a turning point, a catastrophe that would echo for generations. The devastation went far beyond the battlefield, striking at the very heart of Irish society. Death toll and manners of death. The human cost of the Irish Confederate Wars was staggering. Estimates suggest that between 200,000 and 600,000 people died during the conflict out of a population of less than 2 million. Modern historians generally settle on 200,000 to 400,000 as the most accurate range. This means that nearly 1 in 3 Irish people perished in just over a decade. Few wars in Europe's history were as devastating in proportion to population. How did so many die? While battles and sieges claimed tens of thousands, the majority perished from famine and disease. Crops were destroyed, villages burned, and civilians displaced, leaving countless families starving. Plague and typhus swept through refugee camps, killing entire communities. Atrocities and massacres on both sides added to the bloodshed, with Drogheda and Portadown becoming symbols of horror. Exile also took its toll. Thousands were forced into servitude abroad, sent to the Caribbean or Europe as indentured laborers. Many perished on overcrowded ships or in brutal working conditions. Others fled voluntarily, seeking safety in foreign lands, but never returned. The war's death toll was not just a number. It was a national trauma that scarred Ireland for centuries. Aftermath and legacy. End of the Irish Confederate Wars left Ireland under the control of the English Commonwealth. Catholic landowners were dispossessed and vast estates were confiscated to reward parliamentarian soldiers and settlers. This ushered in the Protestant ascendancy, a new social order that marginalized Catholics for generations. The dream of Irish self-rule under Catholic leadership was crushed. For many, it felt like the very soul of Ireland had been stolen. The social consequences were immense. Families were broken apart, communities destroyed, and entire regions depopulated. Catholicism was suppressed, and the surviving Catholic elite lost nearly all political influence. Ireland's cultural and political identity was reshaped under foreign rule. What had begun as a fight for rights and land ended in near total subjugation. Yet the memory of the wars never disappeared. Stories of massacres, famine, and resistance passed down through generations, fueling Irish nationalism centuries later. Folklore turned fallen leaders into heroes, and the suffering became part of Ireland's collective identity. The wars of 1641 to 1653 were more than history. They were a turning point in the Irish struggle for survival and freedom. Impact on modern Ireland. The Irish Confederate Wars may have ended centuries ago, but their legacy still echoes in modern Ireland. The wars entrenched religious and cultural divisions that shaped Irish society for generations. The dispossession of Catholic landowners laid the foundation for the Protestant ascendancy, creating a system of inequality that lasted well into the 19th century. These historical injustices fueled later movements for independence and land reform. To this day, the memory of lost lands and communities remains a powerful part of Irish identity. The violence of the 1640s also embedded stories of suffering and resistance into Irish culture. Tales of massacres at Drogheda and Wexford became symbols of oppression, while leaders like Owen Roe O'Neill were remembered as heroes of resistance. These memories resurfaced in later nationalist struggles, especially during the 19th and 20th centuries. Folklore, songs, and literature carried the pain of the Confederate Wars into modern times. In many ways, the wars provided a narrative of endurance against overwhelming odds. Politically, the wars shaped how Ireland viewed itself in relation to England. The trauma of conquest and dispossession contributed to centuries of mistrust between the two nations. Even today, discussions about Irish sovereignty and unity are influenced by a long history of conflict that includes the Confederate Wars. Modern Ireland's struggles with identity, religion, and memory are tied to these events. The Irish Confederate Wars are not just history. They remain a reminder of resilience, loss, and the long fight for self-determination. The Irish Confederate Wars were born out of anger, fear, and hope for justice. They consumed the nation in violence, leaving behind a wasteland of hunger and grief. From the failed rebellion of 1641 to the brutal conquest of Cromwell, every stage of the conflict deepened divisions and multiplied suffering. Ireland was forever changed, scarred by one of the darkest periods in its history. But this story is not only about tragedy, it is also about resilience. Despite unimaginable losses, Irish identity endured, rooted in memory and faith. The wars serve as a stark reminder of how politics, religion, and greed can devastate a people. At the same time, they highlight the strength of a nation that refused to vanish even when crushed. If you found this history powerful and eye-opening, don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. We bring you untold stories from the past that shape the world we live in today, and your support helps us keep history alive.